Firstly, I'd just like to say sorry to everyone who's a viewer blocking behind me. Good evening, Lord Sugar. I'm not a lord like that fake who's standing up front. Sorry?
Are you going to sing?
No, I'm not going to sing. No, I'm not. Okay, right.
I think the wake-up call for youngsters these days is to recognise that the environment in the United States is completely different to here. And the Zuckerberg story is a 1 in a trillion situation, right? And it is sad that a lot of young people, particularly in this country, aspire to that, and therefore don't get on with starting a business, from scratch, a normal conventional business, and hang around waiting for some kind of magical thing to fly across the campus of McDonald's or something, and then suddenly take off. So I think that what we have to instill with young people and business people is that starting a business from scratch with a small amount of money is the right thing to do with your own money, and get this culture out of our heads of banks have got to provide you the money, because they're not going to. Simple as that. If you have no history, if you have don't have a good balance sheet, if you don't have any assets of your own, they're not going to lend you any money. Simple as that. Get over it. It's not going to happen. There's no good moaning about it, which is what a lot of people do at the moment, saying, oh, banks are not helping, they're not lending, and all this nonsense. They wouldn't lend because the journalists that are writing about it wouldn't lend you a brass farthing either. If they looked at your business model, your idea, and looked at your collateral and stuff. So you need to start something. Just think about starting something small. And I think you've always got to focus on, in my opinion, you've got to focus on a weekly review of what you're doing. I mean, not everybody can be in a business which is buying and selling, where there's a bottle of stuff that you buy for £1 and you sell for £2, and therefore at the end of the week you can say, I've made this amount of money. But in businesses like that, it is great to have a weekly or daily wake-up call as to what targets you're trying to set yourself. Even if it's, I want to clear £500 a week, I want to clear £1,000 a week, I want to clear a couple of £1,000 a week. The simple maths, if you're selling that bottle there and making £1 on each one, is you've got to sell 2,000. And it's so stupid and so simple and so basic, but I'm afraid people get carried away with themselves with their spreadsheets and business plans and PowerPoint presentations. They forget the basic simple principles. And I always remember thinking to myself, I'm going out on Monday morning, starting my own business, and I've got to come back at the end of the week, and I've got to earn some money, and I've got to think about how much margin I'm making on what I'm doing. Yeah. Now, of course, it does not apply to every single business in the world. There are businesses, for example, like real estate agents, where you can't guarantee, you can't actually sell something. Or estate agencies or any other form of consultancy, where I guess you've got to keep control of your costs and your overheads, but always focusing on the fact, as simple as it is, I want to make £1,000 this week, or something like that. That's your targets, that's your goals, and you don't give up until you do it. And stop dreaming about someone else coming in and doing it for you, because they're not going to do it.
I find it quite humorous that people are aware that Lord Sugar became like the czar for youth entrepreneurship, and I think the government wanted you to go out and
well, I did go out.
People.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And then I recall you sitting there and telling it as it is, and people weren't very happy.
No, they weren't happy, no. The Daily Mail enjoyed themselves. They put full page, on the front page, slagging me off on the front page, as those slags normally do.
Yeah.
No, you most probably got a Daily Mail journalist somewhere here. I don't know if you can smell him, but you know, there'll be some quote from me today taken completely out of context. But you know, with the power of Twitter, I've kind of quieted them down a little bit. When they lie, I've got the right to reply there now. Actually, with a population of followers more than their circulation.
Yeah.
At Lord Sugar Twitter, you mentioned young people, and the plan was we were going to take lots of questions from people at the exhibition and put them together, have a good cross section. And most of the questions were all, you know, when I started asking people, it was all about apprentices. So I scrapped that idea, and then there was a young person that approached me today and said, please could you ask Lord Sugar this? And I said, okay. I looked at it and I thought, that's nothing to do with apprentice. Real valuable question. I'm going to ask this. And then very quickly we're going to get into the questions from the audience, okay? So this question is from a young man called A.O. Sage. Is he still in the audience? Oh, he's here, okay, right. So here you go, this is what he's put here. Has there ever been a time in your life that you've allowed fear to stop you from taking a particular course of action? If so, what were the repercussions of this, and what did you learn, if anything, from this? First of all, give a round of applause for the question.
Well, I mean, I take it that your question is related to business, really, not. I mean, there's fear and fear. You know, there's fear of going to Spurs and hoping they'd win a game. There's that kind of fear. But in business, yes, there's a kind of a fear, a nervousness that you are going to gamble and risk something that could go wrong. Yeah, and so you have to weigh up in your mind whether you have the confidence in what you've got to do and go for it. And you don't know whether it's going to work, until you actually do try it. Now, in my case, I can only talk about my experiences because I've never been in the consultancy world or agent world. I've always made stuff, and I've always designed, innovated, made stuff and sold stuff. Okay, and so my answer to you is really going to be related to those to that industry. And so fear is when you design a product and you have your own confidence in it, and no one else has seen it yet, and you've got a lot of yes men and yes women around you who are saying it's also great and wonderful and marvellous, but you never know until it gets out there to the public. And so the fear is investing sometime in order to make things at certain prices. You have to make loads of them. You can't make one of them or two of them. You have to make 100,000 or 200,000 of them, and you have to have the guts to go out and spend that money and know that you're going to have to pay a lot of money, and if it goes wrong, you can lose it. So there's a bit of fear there, in that respect,
Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause one more time. I was going to give another prompt from that, but I can already see people waving at me, so it's that type of audience. So here's where we're going to get into Ask Lord Sugar time. So what I'm going to do is, I've noticed that everybody's waving at me. I'm actually going to start with the people up at the top. Can I just see...
You have to have morals, and you have to have self-discipline, and you have to put your head on your pillow at night and think, well, I'm happy with myself, and that's very, very important. I mean, the last thing you want is government interfering in business. That's the last thing. They know what they're doing. But what you do need for them to do is to create a kind of level playing field, an area where you're allowed to trade freely, but there's no obstacles in your way, and create a good business environment. Now, how do you create a good business environment? Well, I think the starting point would be is for the politicians to stop electioneering and trying to get support from the public by pointing at people like bankers that are getting bonuses and whining on about banks that won't lend money to small companies, because that, trust me, is absolutely electioneering. It is total electioneering. It is total to get people on side. It's a classic example of saying, see that bloke over there, he got paid a lot of money by a bonus, and there's us, the great politician who's trying to look after you, the normal people. So please vote for me next week. And that's really, simply, that's really what is going on. So what we need to do is to create a culture of enterprise. In America, for example, we suffered terribly, like we did in 2007, 2008 and all that. They've gone past that stage now. They're all talking themselves up again, yeah, which you've got to admire about them. We're talking a load of rubbish, but they're talking themselves up again. And there's a kind of a feel-good factor, really, right? Whereas we here, are not in that position yet. We need to create an environment to create enterprise, not to depress it. And in the case of banks not lending money to companies, I'm not sure I've already said this tonight, but in my experience when I was an advisor for the government, there was allegations that this was going on, and I carried out a thorough investigation into it, and I found out two things. One, that a lot of companies are depressed. They don't want any money. They want to tighten their belts at the moment. They're not interested in expansion. They're not interested in taking risks. And we don't want any money, thank you very much. This is what I'm hearing from some of the banks whose companies they would lend money to, because the companies are run properly and they've got assets. Isn't that, it's terrible to hear that. And then there's the other side of the coin of the moaners that are moaning that the bank won't give them any money, won't help them, blah, 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 blah. And when you analyse those companies, they're all skint. And you wouldn't lend them a penny. And they're the ones that shout and scream the most and go to find the Daily Mail journalist to write an article. Right? And they're the ones that they find a journalist to write a politician to write about. So we need to create a more of a feel-good factor in the marketplace, that you can do it. The starting point there is, don't read the Daily Mail.
Firstly, I'd just like to say sorry to everyone who's viewer blocking behind me. Good evening, Lord Sugar. I'm not a lord like that fake who's standing up front. Sorry?
Are you going to sing?
No, I'm not going to sing. No, I'm not. Okay, right. Just a quick question. How do you manage your targets, and how do you stay on your pipeline management? Like, how do you stay on top of it?
How do you manage your targets?
And how do you stay on top of your pipeline management? Like, how do you control it? And
I think one of my very first answers I gave here this evening was about monitoring your progress on a day-to-day basis, even if you start your business on a Monday morning and you want to see by Monday night how much money you've made, whatever. That you just extrapolate that into far more sophisticated monitoring processes to see how you're doing. Very important to be constantly monitoring how things are going. Finger on the pulse stuff, you know. I didn't get the second part of the question. What was that?
How do you... Sorry, hello, 1, 2. MC, right. How do you stay on top of your pipeline management?
You mean my plumber, are you talking about?
I'm sorry.
Pipeline management.
How do you manage your pipeline? How do you on top of it? Business.
He's trying to be too clever to cut.
Pipeline and unblocking and so on. So, ladies and gentlemen,